Sir, my first question to you, what is a futurist? What does a futurist do?
So, futurist, that's a very good question. And not many people kind of understand what that role means. Basically, what I do is I look at, and my area is learning and education that has to do with design. So, as a futurist, we look at a couple of four different trends. One is who, meaning who is your learner?
Mhm.
Who is your learner today? Who's your learner in the near and distant future? What are their mindsets? What are their habits? How that's changing? And also, we need to look at history. The second part of it is when you look at technology and the changes that are coming about because of technology. If you look back 2 years ago, 5 years ago, things are quite different than what it is today. Moving forward, what's going to happen? And then the third thing is attitudes. The generation of today has an attitude and an enthusiasm for learning that is quite different from my time. They're exposed to many different things. And so those are the pieces. And then when you look at vocabulary, today the language has also changed. We look at this thing that
Right.
comes like design thinking, innovation, human-centered design. All these things weren't there. So when you look at all these pieces, things are changing. As educators and education institutions, we need to be prepared for the future generation. How can we keep them immersed and engaged? So that's kind of one of the work I do in looking at trends.
Having said that, sir, you recently visited Agastya. How was your visit there?
That's a great question. And actually, I had a wonderful visit, number one, and really a warm welcome by all the people who were on campus. But, and I want to back up a little bit. Agastya has been ahead of its time. 22 years ago, when Agastya started, it was, they were futurists. The founders were futurists. They looked at what the students from the underserved community, the potential they have. They looked at what happens in their school education, and they looked at what kind of people do we need? How can we bring out their creativity and prepare them to think differently so that they add value to the world as India progresses, as their own world kind of changes. So I'm, and I've always been a strong supporter of Agastya because this is something that's the baseline that has always been there. The aha, aha. Those are the pieces that Agastya has been focusing on. So so that was one of the pieces that I saw that has, when you go to the campus, you can feel it. You can feel it in the sense that when students come in and their excitement beyond just coming on a trip, getting into the math lab, getting into chemistry, getting into the holistic view, that, and I've also been to the village schools before, that whole piece is, uh, you know, thinking about current, near future. So I was very impressed in terms of the setup that's there, the dedication of all the people, and the creative work that's happening.
So, since you have such a storied career of doing this for such a long time, is there a new way of teaching? Is there a new way of looking at the future and teaching now? Is there an old way and a new way in teaching? And is Agastya kind of doing that? And would you give us some tips as to what we could do at Agastya in terms of creativity? Sorry to cut you there, but in terms of creativity.
Teaching is not just teaching. Teaching is many different things. Teaching is connecting. Teaching is bringing out the best in people. Teaching is following certain objectives that you have to fulfill. But how do you get people immersed? A good teacher. And the learners vary too. So when you look at one of the pieces, as I mentioned earlier, the who. When I look at the learners, when I look at a class of 25 to 30 students, it's very important as an educator for me to connect with them. Now, there are various different ways. There are rules and regulations and hierarchical pieces that are there that also have worked in the past, where there's almost the guru shishya relationship, where your teacher is the center for all clarity, is the sole provider of clarity, and students listen and act based on the directives. And that happens still in the classroom for the most part. But when you look at the value that Agastya is bringing to the table, the Agastya educators who are trying to bring another layer on top of the classroom teaching, that value added layer is something that is experiential. That's the basis of Agastya's assumption. So, how do you bring an experiential piece to rest as a layer? And to do that, you need to engage with everyone in the class. And how do you immerse everyone in the class for that? So, there is the center of the guru shishya, that piece, but there's also the facilitator, the catalyst. In this case, the educator is the catalyst. The educator is trying to bring out the best, the creative side of all the students. And if they have a method of doing that, if they have, there's certain simple principles if they follow, and they are able to kind of guide and be good shepherds to steward the whole thing. That is another piece, because that gets into discovery, experiential learning, etc. And there's some really good stories on that. If you Google something called the Hole in the Wall project by Dr. Sugata Mitra in India, he did something in which he put a monitor, a touchscreen monitor, in a slum area of Delhi. And these young people who had never had any education came, and in about a matter of a few hours, they were able to figure out and get results from the internet. Discovery, experience. If educators can do that, be the person facilitating, looking at it from the sideline, but give them the ingredients to build themselves, that's what is another method of teaching in there.